Hello my friends and welcome to another mixed media video. So I have some health issues, so I have been telling myself to create small projects like cards or tags. So naturally, because I am me, my card project turned into a 12 by 12 canvas. But I get ahead of myself. The base for this project is the new timholtz stamps, and I am starting with the creative blocks. And since I want to stamp all of these beautiful blocks, I use a little double-sided tape to attach the whole stamp set to the lid of my stamping platform. And I am going to heat emboss with Wow's Clear Matte Dull embossing powder. And to begin with, I will stamp in Distress Oxide inks in Vintage Photo and Ground Espresso. So I ink up with my lightest brown first and then the darker, totally random, so some parts will be darker than others. But then I need a deeper, darker brown, so I use VersaFine Clear Pinecone ink. I don't ink up the whole thing, I just try to catch the edges and a few details with that dark brown ink and ink up a couple of times for a good impression. Then I cover the whole panel with Clear Matte Dull embossing powder and melt the powder with my heat tool. Now I have a panel with stamping that will resist whatever medium I throw at it, so I bring out my Distress re-inkers in green, blue and yellow shades, and since I am still in that wet on wet mindset from the last project, I will do the same on these blocks. I cover one block at a time with water and then I drop in those concentrated colors randomly, block by block. I know it looks like a hot mess right now, but be brave and bear with me, because when everything is dry, you will see how beautiful this will become. As always, when I have paint or ink left over, I smush some pieces of cardstock into the inks and get some vibrant inky panels for another day. And here are my creative blocks, dry and cut out. Next, I am conducting an experiment using Distress Craft Heavy Stock and a mixture of glycerol and water in a leftover spray bottle, 9 parts water to 1 part glycerol. I spray my panel heavily with the glycerol mixture to loosen up the fibers in the paper. Then I scrunch my panel up with my fingers, trying to achieve a cracked leather look. I haven't tried this before and wasn't sure it would work, but for a first try, I am happy with the outcome. For future testing, I will try other ratios of water and glycerol and see how far I can take this technique. This stamp set is called the Inspector, and I will ink up and heat emboss the Inspector, a clock and a light bulb, the same way as I did on the blocks. I didn't end up using the light bulb in the end, but I always treat my panel with an anti-static powder tool to avoid getting powder where it's not supposed to be, and then I stamp in those brown inks and heat emboss with Wow's Clear Matte Dull embossing powder. Next, I bring out this stamp set called Floral Trims, and I do the same procedure again, ink up in brown inks and heat emboss with Clear Matte Dull embossing powder. So, my leather panel is dry now and I am going to work on it to give it color and bring out those creases and cracks using Distress ink in Antique Linen and Vintage Photo. I blend the light cream color first in the center, then the brown Vintage Photo, trying to catch catch those wrinkles with my blending brush. Then I bring in the VersaFine Pinecone ink and darken the edges and wrinkles before I finish with a smidge of black ink around the edges. Before I call this panel done, I spray some big water droplets all over and use a paper towel to pick up some of that color. At this time I wanted to bring in some metallics, so I bring out copper and gold embossing powders along with those floral trims. I stamp in Versamark embossing ink and cover parts of the florals with Wow's gold embossing powder. Then I cover the rest with my copper embossing powder and melt with my heat tool. And I do this a few times because I want lots of flowers. So this is where I bring in a steel rule die from Timholtz and sizzix. Steel rule dies can cut not only just paper but chipboard, etc. And I cut so many gears from cereal boxes and even cardboard, and I glue them together to get thicker and more dimensional gears. Next, I'm drinking loads of coffee and figure out how to color my inspector. And I decide on the wet on wet technique again with mica spray stains in green, blue and yellow shades. I put down clean water on a diagonal and start dropping in those shimmering sprays, and here and there I help the colors to move with a brush. The heat embossed inspector will resist the color. And as before, I warn you that this looks like a mess, but trust me, just a little bit longer. I color the clock and the light bulb I won't use the same way. To color the flowers I use the same technique, but this time I'm going back to re-inkers in blues and greens. I put down drops of re-inkers on my palette, spray the flower with water and drop in color. The heat embossing creates little wells where color and water mix, and here and there I spray with water again because re-inkers won't dry without you adding water to them. My flowers are drying, and at this point I'm starting to become aware that this project is growing, and now I want to add another element to it. I take the alphabet stamp from the inspector set along with embossing powder in copper and black. I stamp the letters in pinecone ink and heat emboss some parts in copper and the rest in black. I am going to ink smoosh this panel using distress inks and eventually re-inkers to give it some color and texture. I dry in between colors and smoosh in green, blue and yellow ink. Off camera, I cut out the inspector's goggles and a couple of other details from another heat embossed image of the inspector, and now I will use Distress Foundry wax to add some copper to the goggles and gears. I smear it on with my finger or a tiny brush, and it's important to remember to heat set this copper with my heat tool or it won't become shiny and permanent. So, on to the next element. I have an old book page, a piece of black cardstock and multi-matte medium. I use the matte medium to glue down and seal the book page on the black cardstock. While my book page panel is drying, I move on and put a piece of acetate in my stamping platform and stamp the alphabet stamp again onto the acetate. For stamping on acetate, I use a solvent-based ink called StazOn. Here I have given up on a small project and bring out a 12 by 12 canvas. I also have Timholtz backdrop papers and they are just gorgeous. I managed to pick out 2 yellow papers along with a map that I won't use in this video. As much as it pains me, and it does, I tear the 2 yellow papers with my fingers on the diagonal. Instead of the map, I rip out a few old book pages and with multi-matte medium I glue down and seal book pages all over the canvas. I darken the edges of my torn paper with brown ink and then I use the same technique to glue down and seal the yellow papers. Next, I bring out a brick stencil and white texture paste. I push the paste through the stencil in a few random places. So, back to the cracked leather panel and my creative blocks, and in my mind they are now tiles. I glue them all on in rows on my leather panel. To make them look more like tiles, I bring out glossy accents to glaze the top of each tile. But I don't cover the tiles completely, I want them to look old, so I put on glossy accents here and there on all my tiles. Next, I bring out a favorite, the baseboard windows, and choose a window for this project. Remember, I have that acetate we stamped on, and now I hold it behind the window and cut the left upper corner jagged with my scissors. Then I do the same with the lower right corner, so it looks like the window is broken. I bring out Distress Crypt Grit paste that is greyish and have black specks in it. I use my finger to smear the crypt paste onto the window here and there, and then I let it dry. For the bricks on the canvas, I will use water and a few spray inks in melted chocolate, chopped pesto, and later walnut stain. I spray the inks or use a brush for the clogged one and spray water over to help the colors move and blend. The crypt paste on my window is dry, so I use 2 distress crayons in twisted citron and ground espresso. I scribble on the crayon and smudge it with a damp finger until my window looks old. Then I glue the jagged pieces of acetate behind the window. I have these quote chips and I choose one I like for this project. I use my finger to smear copper foundry wax on the edges of the quote and heat it up with my heat tool. Next, I bring out these white paper flowers and I intend to color them in the same color combo as before with yellow, blue and green ink. I just smush ink on my surface, spray with water and smush the paper flowers into the ink. I make green, blue and yellow flowers and I use a brush to add color to the hard to reach places. I want to add more contrast to the collage brick background, so I bring out distress crayons in dark brown, green and yellow. I scribble the crayon between the patches of bricks and the collage and smudge them with my fingers until I'm happy. Okay, let's start putting this canvas together with my glue gun. And behind most of my elements, I have put a couple of layers of cardboard so they will give me that dimension I crave. I glue down the tile panel in the middle and then I start adding my gears. When I have filled opposite corners with gears, I start gluing down the flowers in the opposite corners, filling them up with gorgeousness. When I have my flower corners, I have a thin panel from that book page we attached to cardstock. Off camera, I used the same crayons as before and smudged them around that panel. I have also glued down the extra pieces on my inspector and sewn around the edges with my sewing machine, and I glue him down off center. Next, I glue down my broken window hanging off the edge of my tile panel, and then I start gluing down clocks and more gears. I have cut apart a few floral trims into individual flowers, and I glue them on here and there, peeking out from behind panels or gears. Next, I glue down a few leaves on the window frame, and then I start adding paper flowers to my window, filling it up. And then I glue some extra paper flowers here and there all over my canvas. I have cut out individual letters from the ink smooshed panel from before, and now I glue them on, spelling "Be Curious." I add the quote chip to the upper left corner, and then I bring out glossy accents and fill in the inspector goggles and the letters to get that glossy domed effect. And now, this Timholtz mixed media canvas is finished. Thank you so very much for following along on this adventure. Until the next time, happy crafting!